60 and 60 and single, 60 and happy, 60 and whatever it is that you want to talk about when you're over 60.
You still need me, will you still feed me when I'm 64?
Welcome to 60 and today is Kathi McCarty, and we're getting to know each other. She lives up in Colorado and I'm in Deerfield Beach, Florida. So you probably have several feet of snow on the ground, I would assume.
You know, we have beautiful bluebird skies today. We had some snow mid last week that brought us about a foot of snow, but it's almost gone.
It's 80 here, so
it's the beauty of Colorado.
It's 80. I know Colorado is gorgeous. So tell us about being 60 and retired.
Well, thank you first for having me here, Michelle. I really appreciate this. Being retired at 60 is something I hadn't initially anticipated. Literally 5 years ago, this time I had a health event that put me on a journey when my sight was impacted, my eyes were impacted, and I really didn't know what that meant, but it turned out through several specialists that I was referred to, I learned that I had an autoimmune disease called Graves' disease that ultimately led to affecting my thyroid, which resulted in something called TEDS, thyroid eye disease.
Oh, wow.
And as much as I really hope to return to my career, which I had a very enjoyable, what I refer to as a successful career in banking and lending for over 30 years, I was not able to return to my position due to the impact of my sight.
Wow. That's, you think you've got it all. It's always about your health. As soon as you lose one of those legs, it really affects absolutely everything that you're doing. So I know you have a different kind of story, not related to the health event, but like, what the heck? Like, what happened to you?
Well, it seems to be all in synchronicity in some fashion, right? One thing leads to another, but I just wanted to share that I really, when these things with my health were taking place, I felt nothing but gratitude on so many levels. For one, I had great healthcare, a supportive staff, as well as an employer, a company that I represented that supported me in what I needed to take care of me, and hope that I would come back after having some eye surgeries. I had nothing but gratitude that I didn't lose my sight after a couple surgeries to save my sight, but I ultimately needed to wait for my eyes to heal and go through that path. In that process, though, I learned that I couldn't go back, so I took a new approach after I had a couple more eye surgeries in 2017 to help realign my eyes because the other surgeries definitely leave them out of alignment. And I had some surgeries. After that, I started to look at what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be for my next chapter. At that time, all three of my children were in various stages of college, and I had some opportunities to look at entrepreneurship and consulting and work on some next chapters. And some of that took me out of Colorado. So I chose to, with the financial impacts that a health event can have, I chose to temporarily rent out our family home in the foothills of Colorado in a community called Evergreen that I was blessed to raise my children in for 25 years. And do this in chunks of time while I worked on my next chapter. And in that process, because they were away at college and I was the only one there, I did it at first solely on my own, and then in 2018 I hired a management company. In that process, within 90 days of them putting a tenant in, I had a maintenance issue at my home. outside of the home, but it brought me to the home, and I learned that it wasn't a minor maintenance issue like it was shared with me. It was a major water line break where a large excavator was ordered, and that took me on a path that day to um, look around my home on the backside and whatnot, and I came across hardware and equipment that I couldn't recognize. It seemed very suspect to me. I reached out to the property manager, didn't get a response that seemed anything more than dismissive. I had photos from inside there as well as outside, turned them over to law enforcement. Turned out that that particular equipment that I was seeing behind my home was an extraction system for THC. It led to a search warrant within a couple of days, and then they found a lot of things going on in the inside, including a methamphetamine lab and a significant amount of drugs.
Oh my God. I have to ask this. Were they at least paying the rent on time?
Well, he had only been there 3 months, and this was all discovered at the end of the 3rd month. So no, I never did collect month 4 in rent. In fact, he actually suggested that I pay him to move out because I had what he referred to as an inhabitable home because I had to turn the water off. Even though
It's like these people, like, what balls? I'm saying, it's just like, are you kidding me? So did law enforcement like come in and arrest him, or?
Law enforcement came in. They had a search warrant initially that then immediately converted to an arrest warrant. He took off while the search was going on, and they picked him up later on. A few hours later in the community, they held his car there because they needed to search the vehicle as well. But they found him later on in the community looking to hitch a ride down into the Denver area, and they arrested him. But then he was let out on bail. And he was rearrested for not following his bond requirements, and then
imagine that, right?
And then, and then he was let out again. And when it came time for him to go through the criminal trial process, which was January of last 2020, he was a no-show. He's been on the run ever since.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Does insurance cover anything?
No, that's part of the journey of, I never would have thought at this stage of my life, not only had I put in place, what I thought was stability for my family and myself. I was within single digits of paying my home off once I was ready to retire. But in this process, I found myself on it's been 2.5 years now, but at the time I sort of went through a lot of the legal pieces, an 18-month journey that I could have never imagined. And I had a huge 100 hurdles in the first 100 days. And this really became what I refer to as my call to action, my why. And what is my next chapter, what has been my next chapter, before turning 60 and now, into this decade, is to bring this message and this impact, turn my mess into a message to help others.
So exactly what are you doing? How are you branding it? What's the program?
Well, I founded an organization. It is not a nonprofit yet, but it's for social impact, called Meth Toxins Awareness Alliance. And basically what I started as is and I continue to evolve it, is a prevention platform, a prevention originally on awareness and education. To the things that I learned. You asked about insurance. I put all the right insurances in place, Michelle. I had endorsements for having a tenant there. The tenant, although he didn't have the the levels of the policy that the lease agreement stipulated he was supposed to, he still had insurance. And I found out through this process when criminal activity is conducted in your home, unless it's vandalism where somebody actually breaks in and damages your home, insurances are void on residential real estate, even if it's used for a commercial purpose. And I haven't found, and through any of my avenues with there are hundreds of carriers, but I haven't found any yet that specifically will provide endorsements for this type of activity or criminal activity. It's void when somebody commits a crime in your home and damages it.
So is that mostly what your Meth Toxins Awareness Alliance does, is to inform people about how to be careful about renting their places, or is it some other kind of awareness?
It's awareness on many levels. Thank you for asking. What I learned, there are no socioeconomic or geographical boundaries when it comes to meth toxins impacts. And because of the background that I had in lending, working around real estate and peripheral industries, affiliate industries, I really thought one of the best ways to really enhance the word is through trusted advisors, through real estate, through lending, through property management, insurance advisors, CPAs, all wealth advisors, all these people that we go to for advice. And I didn't know that criminal activity wasn't covered, even in the industry that I worked in, which encompassed a lot of real estate transaction, residential and commercial. And so what I learned, the meth toxins are dangerous to our health, our safety, our finances, and we must protect our families and our friends and our communities through prevention. And the best way to do that first is to bring this awareness and education. And I've aligned with experts who are certified here in the state of Colorado currently, for helping to get these online classes. We had a transition in the fall of last year with the pandemic to an online platform to bring this information at no cost currently to the community, to associations.
What's the cleanup process been?
Great question. So what I needed to do.
I mean, I'm only basing this on watching Breaking Bad. Okay, so that's the only reason why I know anything about it at all. But I can imagine the cleanup.
And what I learned is
it's in the walls, isn't it? Like in the walls, like it's almost like black mold. Like once you get in Florida, we live in fear of black mold. It's like once it's in your walls, they have to rip out everything and start over again, basically.
Exactly. And in my home, I had a restored 1956 restored cabin. So there was a lot of wood there, log beams, a couple of walls in the whole home, one internal and one external wall had drywall. And so I learned where I went to the website for the state of Colorado's health department, and, I basically had to learn meth toxins for dummies, which is why one of the things I did is build this website platform as a resource for others that can go and look for resources immediately with a push of a button and learn a little bit more, and some FAQs on some questions to ask and things like that, some of the basics. In that process, I had 6 different companies after I got the results of my home, which were Colorado has a standard. Every state is different. Some states have 0 standards at all, even though the health impacts are tremendous on our bodies and our families and our guests in our home. But what I learned is my home, 9 out of the 11 zones that were tested range from 69 to 119, with the standard being 0.5 or less.
Oh.
0.5, and 9 out of 11 zones tested were 69 to 119. And 6 different remediation companies came to my home, and they were all willing to give it a shot to try to clean it. but they all said that, we don't guarantee our work anything above usually 30, maybe a couple of them would do a stretch of up to 40 as a number. And I had all these numbers 69 and above. And so they all said they'd be happy to try. It would be very expensive, but they couldn't guarantee their work. And, a couple of them gave me bids for demolition as well.
Oh, ow, ow.
And even if they could get it clean to a standard that Colorado allowed, I learned that you can remediate it to a standard, but that doesn't mean the meth is gone. It could test a particular day to pass the state standard for any area, but it could return later or still be in another area of the home that never met those standards. So I knew, based off of everything I learned from expert research that I got, that this is an environment that wouldn't have been healthy for not only me, but my family and anybody else that I had in the home, from a health standpoint, as well as the fact that it could return later, and financially I could end up having to clean it or potentially even bring it down.
So I'm sure that, I'm going to project here a little bit. You had this lovely, nice and neat banking career. You had this wonderful home. Sounds like you're very organized and everything goes according to plan. And now this has thrown a giant monkey wrench into your life. How do you look at things differently now, where you might have to say, I might have to just demo, I might have to just call that tabula rasa and tear the house down and sell the land. I don't even know if you can sell the land. The land has, well, I only know this because my family, we had restaurants, right? And one of the places they had bought in the 60s used to be a truck garage. And that's why our kitchen ceilings were so high, because they were truck garages. Well, when they went to sell it in the 90s, that's when they started testing earth and stuff. All that stuff was oil and gas underneath all of our buildings that had nothing to do with the 40, 50 years we were there, but it was the previous guys. So we had to pay for, like, I don't know how much dirt removal. And so, it was absolutely insane. So I've kind of been through something similar of that, of just absolute, oh no, you have to remove, a kabillion meters of earth and replace it, and we'll see if that's good enough, kind of a thing. And you're just like, it wasn't my fault. I didn't do it. So what have you learned from this, or what have you let go of in your life, rule wise?
Well, I let go of a lot of things, and it's been been an emotional journey. There's no doubt about it. And I've learned, obviously, as well as my family, this impacted my kids. This cabin was, it's modest as far as cabins go, but as far as its size and, and its condition, but it was something that I wanted to leave to my children once, I wanted to live in it till I couldn't live in it anymore, and then wanted to leave it to my family and let my kids, raise, have an opportunity to bring their kids there or figure it out. But it taught me a resiliency in ways that I couldn't even imagine. And I feel for one, not only I have nothing but gratitude for the people in my life, my family and close friends that have helped me through this journey on so many levels, if nothing else, for a shoulder to cry on. But when you refer to the environmental impacts due to those types of solvents and things like that, where you had to do a phase 1 and a phase 2. I'm familiar with that language in my prior, in my prior career with commercial lending and whatnot. And so I learned that I had to let go of a lot. There's a lot that comes with our identity. And I was a working mom, most of the time, with periods of time off. And their dad and I made decisions over their growing up. He was a stay-at-home dad for a chunk of time, things like that. So that being said, there's a lot that comes with one's identity, with their professional professional careers and things like that. But more importantly, there was an emotional impact that I really didn't see coming. There was a lot of training that I had over a long period of time, and I thought I asked all the right questions and put all the right protections in place, and I still felt a tremendous amount of shame and guilt for what I felt had somehow come into my space, even through what I thought was no fault of my own. If the management company had done their due diligence with vetting the tenant, even to a basic standard, he would have never been in my home. And yet I learned that as good as the insurance industry has been when I've needed it for periods in my life, in this case, I had no idea that insurance didn't cover this. Otherwise, I may have thought differently. I also learned that as much as the judicial process tried to protect me, there's an illusion of protection. My legal process with the tenant officially was satisfied through the courts the end of 2020 in a ruling that I'll never collect on and I'll never get whole on. And as far as the process I had with the management company, I had a whole different journey there that ended a year ago this time, where my civil trial was to begin. And I did end up mediating for something that did not make me whole. So it's been
and
a very
I'm sure people ask you, like, if you could give someone advice as to how to not have this happen. It's impossible, because this is one of those things that no matter what you think you know, you don't know what you don't know. Right. And you don't know until it happens to you, and how to manage from that. But I always ask, there's two different questions that I have. Like, one is, this could be anything in your life. Like, what was the scariest moment, which I can imagine is walking to that house and seeing that stuff. What's been the scariest moment of your life?
The scariest moment, there's been several.
Yeah. Okay.
The scariest moment, like jumping out of a perfectly good airplane, but that type of thing. But I would have to say the first thing when you said that came to my mind was my youngest child, my youngest son, when he was born, and he there seemed to be some distress going on after he was born, after a perfectly smooth pregnancy, and there was just a few moments of some, what I consider to be some severe concern. Yeah. And then he turned out to be healthy and fine and perfect, but that would probably be my scariest moment that I thought of.
Sure.
Right.
Is there anything else you want to tell me about the program that you're doing? Do you call it a program, or do you have a word for it?
I call it it's really a prevention platform, and my prevention platform encompasses so many areas and layers. I'm starting to align with leaders in our community here to hopefully affect some legislative changes, some enhancements to the rules that I learned with my own home. I would say, when it comes to anybody who is looking to potentially rent their home out, you don't have, I'm not here to deter you from using a property manager. I'm here to ensure that you ask them the right questions and validate and verify certain standards and protocols that they put into place, and to be part of the vetting process and the final decision making on who goes into your home. Because I learned that even though I was told certain things were done, they weren't done. And then when I verified after the fact, when I looked into some of these things myself, like a simple credit report, I wouldn't have, he was violating his basic application and things like that. So be part of that process and put some language around your own management agreements as to what the expectations are that they do. Well,
I hate to tell you, but you are definitely not retired, because you've created a business. This platform is huge, absolutely huge. If you're speaking and you're going to be communicating about this and all the things that are involved, it's a real business that you've created. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. We've opened it up, and tomorrow we'll have I believe our 7th or 8th class online. We've reached throughout the state of Colorado. We've had about 400 register, with actually about 300 participate statewide in only several classes, and we're going to continue to grow. And so yes, my goal is that I've learned that this is not just a local thing here. It's not a state thing here in Colorado. It's national, and it's actually global. So you're absolutely right. I'm looking to collaborate with partners and sponsors in many industries and organizations who want to help me get this word out through their trusted, through their platforms, and bring this awareness to prevent this from happening.
And doing a
anybody
whole
else.
nonprofit thing, that's a whole nother kind of business. I've worked with some like that. There's so many hurdles to jump there as well. I'm sure you'll be able to do it, but you have quite the work set out for you.
Well, I do, and I feel like I've been channeling my Erin Brockovich.
Okay.
If I were to, if we can. Depending upon when, how old you are, you could possibly relate to that.
The group that would watch this will definitely understand that.
Right. And you mentioned Breaking Bad. I did sell my home last year in April, and I was forwarded an article that was out of San Francisco where my quote, Breaking Bad home in Colorado was #1 on realtor.com a couple weeks in a row. And that's what they called it. They called it the, Breaking Bad home. And I would like to continue to follow through with what happened with that home, potentially at a different time, because I did sell it. And I just wanted to share with you that it was remediated to the Colorado standard, but the meth was not fully removed. And then it was able to be resold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, more than I sold it, months later, undisclosed. So this is my mission, is to ensure that people have that opportunity to really know what they're purchasing, because I have no idea if those people learned of the meth toxins impact, and they may have chosen to do some due diligence that they may or may not have done. And so that's why this mission
I'm sure the people who didn't disclose it to sell it at that higher rate made sure that they didn't give them the information that they needed. So, I mean, you'd have to hide the information.
Well, yes, but the reports that I had, and their reports when they went through their remediation process, are on the Colorado CDPHE website. But most people either don't know that it exists, or how to you leverage it, and what they're seeing. And even if they see it, they may go, "Oh, well, the state approved it, so it must be okay." And I'm not here to instill fear. I'm just here to share that what I learned is, even though it could have been remediated, I learned that wasn't a standard I was willing to live with myself, or especially my family and my friends to be exposed to.
So I have something a little more upbeat.
Yes.
Magic is really important in my life. My father was a magician, so I have a lot of magic things around me. And I want to ask you, what was the magic moment in your life? If you could pick one moment that was really the magic moment, what would you say that was?
Oh, one magic moment. Again, it all, there are so many, but I'm going to go back to, I have 3 children. It's been the most amazing miracle in my life. Is the very first time I felt, my daughter was first, and the very first time I felt movement inside of me was a magical moment that really brought me to tears.
Yeah. Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet.
And
well,
so,
I mean, you certainly have, you thought you retired, and now you've started a whole movement. And I think that it's pretty awesome. And I love that. I'm sorry that you had to go through it, but you are definitely the one to carry this message and to help other people. So there's always you know, the coin has two sides, and you can't have light without dark. So I'm sorry that all of that had to happen, but you seem very resilient. And I think that you probably have a good thing going, and that you were the right person to make this happen. So I
I
really respect
appreciate that.
I
I
really
appreciate that. And I do feel that because of a lot of things that you had mentioned, my resiliency, even my training, my appreciation for the depth of what I went through, and how right out of the chute, from the moment the testing company was there, I knew that more had to be done. And I am grateful for this chapter and for my health to be able to uh, uh, post-pandemic, I hope to be able to get around more, but through Zoom, this is perfectly great
yeah.
to share this message on a broader scale. But the movie Nomad Land that just came out, I mean, I resonated with it because it gave me sort of an understanding that although I'm houseless, I'm not homeless. I bought a truck and a camper to, to take this, to take this next chapter and figure it out personally and professionally, and have added some adventures with family and friends, and even myself, and have some joy along the way. And
I found that when you do things that are non-traditional, and I'm not putting down traditional things at all, but when you take a path that is not so non-traditional, I think it's always filled with a lot of excitement and a lot of learning and a lot of enjoyment. And it's not always important to have all those traditional things around you. It's okay to just, like you said, no man land. It's like, let's go.
right. And although I seem to have more of a traditional career and whatnot, there are times in my life, including post my eye impacts, that I've always taken the path less traveled, and continue to do so on a lot of levels. And I feel, again, doing this with nothing but a little bit of grit, or maybe a lot of grit at times.
I think a lot. I think a lot.
But grace, but nothing but gratitude that
if you had to have a message to your daughter, how old is your daughter?
she's 30.
30.
Now.
If you had a message to your daughter or that generation, what would you want to tell them?
Wow, she teaches me so much. Well, she has not followed tradition, and so to just keep following your dreams,
Yeah.
just keep reaching for your stars.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your time, and I wish you all the luck you need. It looks like you've got smooth sailing. You've got all sorts of awards and things for what you're doing. And usually when you're doing good in the world, luck finds you. So I think you will have a lot of success. And wow, what a very big subject to make us all aware of. I lived in Europe for a long time. And when I came back, to the States in 2005, I was so surprised at this whole opioids and like all this. Like, I left in 1990 and that stuff didn't really exist. Sure, there was stuff, but not like this, so I was rather surprised. Like, I kind of came into it like, what is everybody talking about? I didn't realize the prevalence. And I mean, since then, I know people, not in my immediate circle, but from their immediate circles, that have tragically lived with, people dying. And I'm originally from Ohio, so you can imagine Ohio is also like Colorado. It has a big issue there.
Well, Michelle, I was born and raised in northeastern Ohio
Where?
myself.
I'm from Akron.
I'm Cleveland, and my dad lived in Akron before we brought him here. So
oh, you're kidding. West Akron. I'm like Akron. Usually when people say Akron, then they go, oh, Greensboro or something like. No, I'm Akron.
I was
awesome.
born and raised in the eastern heights of University Heights and,
Yes, University
then
Heights, sure.
Willoughby mentor in my earlier years. And then my mom moved to San Diego, and I spent 20 years there before raising my own family here, missing the changing of the seasons, and wanting my kids to, just not grow up maybe in Southern California.
I will tell you then, if you're Northeastern Ohio, it's the grit, baby. We have grit, and that's where that comes from.
That's where that comes from. And but you mentioned the opioid addiction, and just real briefly, I wanted to share, and that's where Meth Toxins is very different, because when I was, in San Diego in my 20s, when I had first learned about meth, people weren't smoking it, and it was consumed, in other ways. And so the impact is not, obviously there's a huge impact to the user, but it's to the rest of us that are in the environments. If we have a family member or somebody that's in our home and potentially smokes it once in a room, that room could be impacted to exceed the standard for that state, and it impacts the other people around them. It impacts their health as well as the finances. And so that's what I learned growing up in a home where there was smoking and secondary smoke and all that kind of thing, where it impacted me. So it's like that, but worse. It's like that, but on steroids, because it doesn't go away. It doesn't dissipate, and you can't smell it.
Is there any part of your platform that works with groups that are trying to help those people at all?
I actually reached out to some last week. I'm waiting to hear back, where I really would like to align with these organizations that have rehabilitation, the rehab facilities, and then there are supports for the families of that.
Because like you said about secondary smoke, it's kind of like those kids that are in the house that have no control over what's happening to them.
Right. And they may not even be aware that the meth addictions that they're seeking for their friends and or family members may have a secondary impact to them that they're totally unaware of. People don't want to know about it. I can assure you that, because then they have to deal with it. But we're buying and selling real estate, and most people think, oh, well, that affects the inner cities or the higher crime areas. And that's what I learned along the way. And it's kind of like this pandemic. The more you test for it, the more you learn that it's in every community. It is in every city or rural area, in every state, and even multiple countries. All you have to do is Google it, and story after story will come up. And I've met families impacted. And so that's the need that's out there. And that's the message. And this is my why to, there are children, babies, unborn babies being exposed to all this. And the more we know, the more we can prevent this from happening to us. So.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I will let you know when we get this published, probably in the early summer, I hope. So I'll make sure you get all the information. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining.
Michelle, I appreciate your time and your interest. Thank you so much.
Okay,
have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.